Welcome to the First 100 podcast, the show where we interview startup founders and leaders to find out exactly how they got their first 10, 100 and 1,000 customers. My name's Joel. I've been building businesses for a decade now, and I've also been a growth advisor for over 100 early stage startup teams. Some you will have heard of by now, but we don't care about me. Our guest today is Melissa, the founder and CEO of The Modernists. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to dig in.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much for coming. So I think we should probably start right at the top with what is The Modernist today? Because you will do it far more justice than I'd be able to do it before we get into how we got here.
Yeah, so very simply, we're a tech-based platform connecting extraordinary private venues with a new generation of members seeking culture, connection, and community. And the easiest way to the way that I pitch it is essentially kind of like the class pass of essentially private membership spaces. So with our platform, our curated community can access a global network of private membership spaces, events, experiences, all wherever they travel.
Excellent. The class pass of luxury hospitality is an excellent one. That's kind of cleared things up. Yeah, nice, quick way of understanding it. So I guess we'll find it most useful for the listener for us to start this journey way back at the origin story of your business and where it all started. I did notice, I don't want to lead your answer, but I did notice you had a background in architectural design. So I'm wondering if that had anything to do with it. Please enlighten us.
Yeah, definitely. I can take you guys all the way back. So I guess my entrepreneurial journey actually began when I was 18. I started my first company then, which was essentially like a fashion tech platform. And we were essentially buying and reselling secondhand clothing, kind of pre-Vestiaire collector days. And that helped, fund some of my undergraduate kind of living expenses. And it was a great business to run. And it got to a point where essentially the prices of charity shops were really increasing, and then we weren't able to kind of upsell as much. So we pivoted that into what became like an online content platform for fashion. And then, that did pretty well. And then we started doing print magazines, and that didn't go so well. So it was a very interesting and informative time during my kind of early career. And then it got to the point where I was kind of juggling obviously starting this company and then also my architecture studies, and I think my parents were like, you should probably focus on your architecture studies at least for a little bit, so that we get our money's worth and see you graduate.
The classic parent move, that one.
So I ended up kind of leaving that and then focusing on my architecture studies, and I worked within architecture for a number of years. I worked for the really big names like Wilkinson Architects on like really big infrastructure projects, to then kind of pivoting and then working more within kind of real estate and more luxury property design as well. So that was really good fun. And the idea for The Modernists came about actually when I was studying my master's. So I was working part-time. I was also kind of between London and Paris. Then I was up in Cambridge for my studies, and I had like a co-working membership, I had a members club membership, and I had a wellness membership to suit all these different kind of elements of my lifestyle, kind of like the live, work, play, as they say. And I remember using something like ClassPass, and I'm still a member of ClassPass, and I absolutely love it in the way that it just offers such flexibility for the mobile person that I am. Being in my late 20s, I love going around to different, places of London, or when I'm traveling, I love accessing different fitness classes. And I had that light bulb moment where I was like, oh, like maybe I could build a class pass of kind of essentially private spaces where you can access these really cool spaces, but you could be in New York, you could be in Paris, you could be in Milan, or you could just be visiting a couple months somewhere, and it just gives you that flexibility to form community. And that became, I guess, essentially the problem that I had became our thesis for the problem that we're trying to solve for The Modernists, because the problem that I had was actually a problem that a lot of people had at my age, and especially post-COVID. What we found in the early stages of the kind of, I guess, business thesis development was that a lot of younger people, ages 25 to 40s, they're more mobile than ever, but they're lonelier than ever, and lacking in connection and community. So what we do at The Modernists is we solve that through essentially creating great experiences and great events through connecting these people to these amazing spaces. So when we partner with these spaces, we're not only giving access to necessarily the space, but we're also giving them access to a curated network of events, experiences, and allowing them to form genuine connections and community as well. And then obviously as the business developed, we sat in front of a lot of hospitality operators, members clubs, co-working spaces, wellness clubs, and they all had the same problem, like operational problems they were trying to solve, was that they were struggling to attract the right kind of customers, especially post-COVID, where their businesses were pretty much wiped out because they couldn't open.
Absolutely.
And they were struggling necessarily to fill all their events. They were struggling to kind of curate and actually form community. So we realized that there was this kind of nice dual-sided kind of problem that we're trying to solve, which was in that we're trying to solve a front-facing customer problem and then also a kind of operational problem for the venues as well. So from those beginnings, it was very humble beginnings. I was working. So yeah, I left Cambridge, completely left architecture. I went and did tech consulting for about 6 months. I was on a graduate scheme and I started The Modernists, literally with like a £28 Flow Desk subscription, which is like a newsletter marketing tool, and essentially curating a newsletter of the places I thought were the best place to go to, whether that was a members club or a new co-working space. And we did our first community event at Old Sessions House in Farringdon. That was like, I think, September 2023 now. So yeah, so a good two and a bit years ago. And then it just grew, I would say, very organically, just through events we were hosting at these venues. And, I wasn't someone that worked in hospitality, so I had to build those connections from literally the ground up. So the best way we did that was through events. And that was the best way that we essentially brought the community together, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And all the money was reinvested back into the business in the early stages, but we've been fully bootstrapped until fairly recently, where we've got some investment into the business. But it's been a crazy journey.
Yeah, absolutely. That was, thank you very much for catching us up to where we are today. I'm actually going to start right back at the start. And there's something that we have very much in common that I didn't realize before we hopped on this call. When I was 18, I also started a secondhand fashion brand and built for the next
competitor.
We were with that brand for the next 7 years, actually. So starting in my university halls dorm, going to charity shops, things got more and more expensive, and then we had to move on to wholesalers, etc., and then kind of snowballed from there. So that's very interesting. But yeah, that's all in the past for me as well now. It was fun while it lasted, but I had to move on to something with a bit more scale.
Yeah.
So sorry, I had to touch on that because I didn't realize that about both of us there. Excellent. Okay, so it sounds like your MVP for this was a newsletter, which is a fantastic way of getting into it and starting to build kind of the audience and the community feel to it. You touched a little bit on how you grew organically in the first place. Let's dive in. Let's imagine we were yourself in that exact position when you were just starting that newsletter.
Yeah.
What did you do day to day to get the first 10 people digitally through the door?
Yeah, look, I think obviously there's a newsletter, and social media played a big role in our growth as well. So we had actually, even before the newsletter started, we launched the Instagram, and there were people that were messaging on there being like, oh, like, what do you guys do? Would love to sign up. So that was actually really early stage validation, where you're getting literally people you don't even know to try and actually sign up. So that was kind of, I would say, a really positive first step forward. And when they signed up, I think initially we had like a newsletter of maybe 200 people, of which probably a quarter were my friends. So I definitely did get my friends to sign up. But I think, the test did become, okay, like when we do an event, how many of those people are your friends coming to support you as the founder, and how many are like actual genuine customers? So the first event, I would say, was like 50-50. We had people that came that I'd never met before, that heard about it through social media, and speaking to those people was just so fundamental. And I think that's where there is that kind of beauty in the scrappy early stages of company building that I think a lot of people do underestimate. But standing in front of those people, there were the questions like, okay, so how can we grow this? What's the value that we need to deliver? What are your pain points? How can we solve those? And that translates to your first 10, 100, 1,000, 100,000. That's a constant question you have to be asking. Because it grows and it develops. But I would say social media. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I want to dive into that a little bit further about customer discovery, because I think this is something that I know as a founder, it can be painful at times to think about going out and talking about your idea. I know lots of founders don't even want to share their idea in the first place, but um,
Yeah.
so in your exact instance, I guess it was slightly easier to talk to these people because the whole part of your offer was the events and the bringing people together. Do you feel like when you're having those events, was it one of your priorities to go around and just learn as much about these people as possible?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because a few of the customers in the very early stages actually have become my friends now, and we kind of hang out
Nice.
afterwards. They've been very supportive to the business, and yeah, just sitting in front of them, getting a coffee, having that, I guess, inquisitive nature has been super important. But even
Yes.
outside of the events that we were hosting, we were sending out surveys, we were sitting in front of various different people. There was LinkedIn as well, where we were messaging people and getting them A, to sign up to our newsletter, but B, to also be like, hey, this is what we're doing. Like, if you have any thoughts, any input that you want to kind of contribute, please let us know. We'd love to do a call. So I think you just need to be highly inquisitive and highly determined in those kind of very early stages.
I completely agree. I think curiosity, but genuine curiosity and not forced curiosity, which is a bit of a difficult one because if you're not genuinely curious, then how do you create genuine curiosity? But yeah, that is a massive strength for people in the early days, but as you said, through different phases of the business lifestyle. So, social media. So, you mentioned it a little bit there. Let's talk about how your strategy started and how maybe it's evolved over the time. What platforms are we referring to here, firstly?
Yeah, so mainly it initially started on Instagram. So now we do use TikTok as well. But because our kind of ICP is, 25 to 40s, it is, a slightly younger audience and they mainly use Instagram. They love kind of short form content. So I would say Instagram, TikTok is a big strategy for us. Also, we do use LinkedIn as well, obviously, because we do attract a lot of professionals. But yeah, in the early stages, I very much just focused on one platform only and kind of scaled from there. Obviously, as the team grew and they had more expertise than I did. But initially, very much started off with Instagram. And I think the key strategy we have, and we still have now, is essentially hyper curation and making sure that every time someone follows us, that we send them a message, that we send them a follow up message, that we make sure that they're kind of cared for and known, and to thank someone for following us and engaging with our content. I don't know many other businesses that do that to that degree, so that was really important to us, is having that kind of attention to detail in that customer experience, even if they're not a member on the platform but they're just interested and they're following us. So that was really quite important. And again, it was that kind of, yeah, persistence in making sure to follow up, and if someone does show interest, to take that time and that care to make sure they're known and they're heard.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I hear a lot from some marketers is actually being social on social media, which most of us are guilty of not doing. We like to post, ghost post, and then disappear because we're just here to get something and then not actually give back to people. So, it sounds like you've taken the correct approach and you've actually turned up for people and responded and communicated with them. I'm interested to see where your newsletter is at, considering it was the first thing you ever did. Has this continued on through your business?
Oh, definitely. The newsletter, even now, is the core pillar of how we engage with our community. I think it's definitely one of the things that one of our investors, well, I know one of our investors, he absolutely loves it. Like every time I think he gets a newsletter, he's like, "I love this. Keep sending it to me." I'm like, "Okay, we'll send you more." But yeah, we're very much, I would say, design led. So our newsletters,
Yeah.
they look amazing. They're beautiful. They're not your average kind of newsletter. When you get them, it's very much like a special, curated luxury experience. And that even from the very early stage, obviously the design and the feel of it has developed and has changed. But we've had, I would say, since the early stages, like a very, very good kind of growth curve in our newsletter signups. And yeah, we're over like 1,500 newsletter subscribers now, which is
Congrats.
great
Yeah,
from the
it
very
is
early
great indeed.
stages.
So if I was to chart out your kind of funnel at the moment, it would start with social media and maybe real life events slightly. That would feed into the newsletter, which would kind of build engagement and get people to trust you and know all about you. And then you would move people in back into real life events and into the membership, etc. Does that sound about correct?
Yeah, correct, absolutely. And then also we do use now WhatsApp as well. So that's, if someone if someone kind of signs up and shows some engagement, we'll communicate via WhatsApp. And my co-founder and I are very keen on kind of calling and making sure people are kind of heard. Yeah.
That's excellent. I would say that WhatsApp is an underutilized platform here in the UK specifically. So I've just come back from Indonesia where everything is done on WhatsApp. It's like everything is automated. They have conversations with 10 different companies each day while you're out there. And I come back to the UK and nobody really does WhatsApp marketing in, well, at least the companies that I'm involved with don't seem to do it. So could you tell me a little bit about how that's worked for you and maybe some top tips if anybody else is thinking about taking it on for themselves?
Yeah, I guess I forgot to mention as well, we have a WhatsApp community. So when we built our current tech platform, which is we have a web app where our current membership base is on, and we didn't well, initially we didn't build the community within the app, but we built it or we built it up in WhatsApp. So that was kind of like the easiest way to essentially kind of build a community on WhatsApp. And at the moment, that's where our community members could share events. Like they've got, black tie dinner they want to share, or they've got, a spare ticket to like dinner at like Roof Gardens or something like that, and they want to invite like a plus one from the community, they can do that. Or essentially, if they've got tickets to a great concert, they can kind of list that on the platform. And then we've also got the channel where we post, obviously, probably like once or twice a week, like any highlight events, like what's on this week, and that has quite a lot of engagement on the platform. So that also was quite a big thing initially. So that's how the WhatsApp initially started, and then we got like a business WhatsApp number, and that was whenever someone joined, we would send like a message being like, "Thank you for joining. Here's like the link to events," or if we have someone sign up to one of the events, or they have like a question, they could just WhatsApp us. But I would say it was a fairly big undertaking. I think we launched it maybe like 6 months ago, but it's been so fundamental to engaging with our community. And again, it's that I think the thing with communities is people want to feel like they're known and they want to feel like they're part of
Yes.
something. So if you're able to give them that level of, I guess, service, then you will definitely find they will keep coming back.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm just throwing it out here that I remember reading about a year ago, interesting statistic about WhatsApp marketing, that there's something like a 99% open rate, which is obviously far better than any other marketing platforms or channels that we've been using. Do you find that still to be the case?
So like most of, I would say literally like 100% of our members
Yeah.
open WhatsApp. I would say there are those kind of WhatsApp marketing messages you get, which I do get them on my personal number, that do look a bit scammy. I will
Yeah.
say that we don't do that. Ours is purely, I would say, more like communication means, and we're not heavily marketing things on like a daily basis. So it's not like a spam tool. It's
Absolutely.
you're welcome to be a part of the community and we'll share the events, but we're not trying to hard sell you anything.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, excellent. So, is there anything else that we haven't chatted about in terms of marketing that's got you to where you are today?
I would say in terms of the marketing development, yeah, like I said, short form content is a big one for us, and especially every month, my co-founder and I we do quite fun monthly update videos. You could go watch them on on our social media, and that kind of playfulness is quite important to our brand as well. It's a bit tongue in cheek, it's a bit fun, and that's kind of what it's all about. And yeah, in terms of the events that we host now, we still do our monthly community events, and again, content and influence partnerships which we've done have been really important in our growth as well.
Okay, great. So, in terms of, let's picture we are one of the audience here watching us have this conversation and they have a similar company to you, but they're a little earlier on in the stages. How have you managed to scale kind of your content systems, your team, your output without reducing quality or having that personal touch that you're very proud of?
Yeah, oh, that's a big question. I would say that it takes a lot longer than you think.
Yeah,
In my head, I think everyone guesses. I think they highly underestimate how long it takes to kind of scale a business and B, a team. I mean, I've been very lucky in everyone that's come alongside us. So the team has stayed relatively small. I mean, this time last year we had a team of four, and we still have a team of four now. So we haven't really kind of grown in terms of team size, but definitely next year that will change. And we tried to stay very lean as we were still bootstrapped last year. So definitely bootstrapping, obviously that does limit you in what you can do, but it did allow us to be quite
sure.
clever and have used our funds, and predominantly, as I mentioned, we invested into the tech and the tech platform, but also into kind of membership acquisition initiatives. As I mentioned, Instagram was quite a big one. So in the early stages, there was Instagram ads, partnerships with influencers, which we still do now. So that was really important. So for anyone, I guess, sitting in front of us, it would be that I would have, yeah, just a very clear plan each quarter, what you're going to do, what you're going to deliver, and how you're going to deliver it, and then essentially to implement and to do that. And I think that was one of the things I guess always been good at, is that if I have a plan, I know I can implement it, and I can
Yeah.
implement it fast. I think sometimes I think a lot of people underestimate the time you need for thinking, and I know
Hmm.
I know a lot of people do rush into decisions and rush into doing things, but sometimes taking your time to think, and not to rush is actually quite wise sometimes.
That's excellent. And I'd like to dive further into that actually, because you mentioned there that you plan your content out for perhaps the whole quarter. To what extent? So I'm just from professional curiosity, I have had a problem of either batching too far in the future where I realize the pillars or the kind of content I'm creating isn't working, but now I've made months worth, so I'm just releasing it. But at the same time, I don't want to, so I want fast feedback from the new content that I'm testing, but I don't want to be only a few days ahead of my content schedule. Have you encountered the same sort of problem along the way?
Yeah, definitely. Initially, I mean, it's trial and error. I mean, we did a lot of kind of A and B testing of content schedules. I would say now we probably do it more on a kind of monthly basis, because it is
Okay.
tricky, because we do get a lot of last minute events. We get a lot of last minute things that we need to market. So it
Yeah.
can be a bit tricky. We have, I would say, like core content that we plan kind of on a monthly, quarterly basis. That's like your kind of, weekly stuff that has to go out, that we know is kind of the core elements. And then anything that's, I would say, last minute additional, we then plan on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, lovely. So I think we have covered everything that has got you here today. I am now going to move on to any failures or any marketing flops that you've had along the way, because it's best to embrace them and it's more helpful for people to learn from our mistakes than their own. Is there anything that stands out to you as not a good day in the marketing space?
That's a really good question. Um, Failures. Yeah, I can't think of like a very specific failure. I mean, we've done ads that did not work out as well as we thought in
Yeah.
terms of signups. I think everyone has had, every probably brand in
Yes,
the
they have.
has had just
Yes.
some great ad where you're like, okay, I'm gonna put like £200 behind this ad, and then like nothing happens. You're like, well, I just wasted all that money. Other times you put in very little money and you get lots of signups. So I think for us, the sticky point has been, yeah, just how can we acquire those customers in a very kind of orderly manner, but also in a manner that we can kind of track everything. And I think that's sometimes been tricky as well, in terms of like, making sure UTM tags are in place, making sure you have your strategy in place, rather than just kind of throwing money and just hoping for the best. So at the moment, I would say, steering away from paid ads too much, but just focusing on kind of referrals, word of mouth, slightly more organic growth, or like growth through events, is what mainly we've been focusing on.
Absolutely. That's a big problem that all of us founders face, is that firstly, we spend money on ads and they don't work, because the first batch of money you spend on ads is just to learn how not to run ads. And that's something that all founders need to know and understand when they're throwing money at it. But also, yeah, attribution, that might be a bit of an e-commerce related term, but um, automating kind of the tracking, and as you mentioned there, UTM parameters, etc., of where these people have actually came from, so that we know what's successful and what isn't successful. And that becomes even harder when you bring in the aspect of word of mouth. How are we tracking word of mouth? It's very difficult. So yeah, I think that's a common problem that lots of people have come up against. Not that it's possible to solve that problem, but how have you kind of jumped over those barriers yourself? What's kind of your approach to tracking what's worked and what hasn't?
So every month we put together a marketing report. So we sit down with kind of all the platforms, we put it all into a nice report, and we sit down with our kind of marketing team. We kind of go through everything, go through kind of new content ideas, and that actually we do on a weekly basis. So yeah, just making sure you have a good structure in place to do reports. It doesn't need to be, something that you spend a whole day on, but even a couple hours. And yeah, just making sure that there's the time carved out. And I know it is hard when you're kind of all busy and everything like that, but just making sure that there is time carved out to essentially kind of review and revise, and then come up with a new plan if that's not working.
Absolutely lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, we're coming towards the end of our podcast here, so I'm going to ask you one final question. If we could time travel back to when you started this business, what advice would you give yourself right at the start of this journey?
Yeah, I would say that to myself, I would have said, don't wait as long to fundraise. I think that was one of my main things in the beginning. I think I bootstrapped probably for a bit too long, and that was mainly out of circumstance and kind of where we were at. But I wish I'd kind of raised at least an initial round a little bit earlier. Would be what I
Okay,
said.
absolutely. I think so. Having bootstrapped my own business for 7 years, as I mentioned earlier in this, yes,
Oh,
I wish that we didn't make it so hard for ourselves, right? It's there's obviously pros and cons to taking investment, but it's a difficult job bootstrapping, and sometimes you just need the relief of having some sort of finances to implement some of your projects. So if anybody has made it to the end of this podcast here, I'm guessing that's because Melissa's story is resonating with you. So Melissa, where can people connect with you? What should they do if they want to learn more about the Modernists?
definitely. Please do connect with me on my personal socials, but also on The Modernist. And if you go to themodernist.co, you can read all about us, read what we're building, but also join as a member. We have a great membership and a great community. And then personally, I mainly use Instagram, so that's Melissa_Dewar, and you can kind of follow my personal journey as well as my business one.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Melissa, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been so much fun.
Bye-bye. This has been the First 100 podcast. We will see you in the next episode.